from the start.
I have such a bad memory. I'm about to embarrass myself. You wrote a piece that I read. About like kindergarten and Italy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's you, right?
That's me.
Okay, yeah, I love that piece. It got me like, I keep forgetting. Well, I think I tried to like get into it, and then my skills as a librarian failed me. I was like, what books are these books in English? Can I read these? And I wasn't sure. So I love the piece.
Thank you so much.
Oh, okay. Well, I loved it, and then now that I was kid.
Yeah.
Oh,
Burning
right.
on the horizon. Are you seeing it unfold?
Well, we got into this preschool. It's gonna start next year, but it's all outside.
Nice.
So the kids are like outside all day, 8 to 4. They take a long hike every day. It's really fun. It's in Kensington. So anyway,
So rain and shine,
I mean, if it's like really rainy, probably. It's cool. Anyway, I really love that one. I want to read the collective works. Yeah, I think so. I think Sid's gonna do like Sid stuff, and I'm gonna talk for 5 minutes. And then Bob's gonna read, and then we'll be all good. Then everything will be fine. Yeah. I kind of keep thinking of myself as like the 5-minute obstacle between this whole room and like the greatest art ever made. So I'm like, okay, make it quick, Brandon. Make it quick.
how people
It's a daunting task.
Yeah, introducing it like the
Introductions are kind of easy sometimes.
This one's hard. I'll wait and experience the first time. Curious to know how you
It was just my favorite.
here's the truth. I just did my former way. That's for all of us.
I know, right? Where do you live? Where do you live? Okay, cool. At Bart, that would be so sweet. That would be so cute though if we met on Bart.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Years ago, and then I was about to tell you again. It was a homecoming.
That's so nice.
I
live in Richmond.
Okay.
Yeah, like near the El Cerrito Military Park.
Okay.
So cool. We really have this amazing mayor, Eduardo Martinez, who he's a socialist, and he won like in a landslide. And we had just moved to Richmond when the election was happening. We would come to the door and be like, vote for Eduardo Martinez. And we're like, what's the deal? They're like, he's a socialist. And they see like, oh,
Get started in
we're not going to vote for Eduardo Martinez actually. Like, that's amazing. Okay.
Hello. Here we are. At last. Celebrating the arrival of Robert Gluck's About Ed. I remember hearing Bob read from About Ed, a work in progress, maybe about 10 years ago or so, and I remember just sitting in the room listening to this work and just feeling like it was really special and just taking in where I was and what I was hearing as a young babe. And yeah, it's just really special to have you here and to be able to host you. I'm quite humbled to be welcoming you and this book into the world. It's great, and it means a lot, not only to me, but to the organization, as Bob was a founder and just iconic figure for us in his workshops that he led and running the reading series from the late 70s through the 80s, and here we are. So lots of love. I wanted to thank the New York Review of Books for publishing the book and co-sponsoring this event, and also to City Lights for co-sponsoring and for selling books. Please grab your copy. Help yourself to drinks, as I'm sure many of you have. Feel free to make a little donation if you are able to support Small Press Traffic as we enter our 50th anniversary next year. And in a moment, I will invite Brandon Brown up to introduce Bob. Just some quick events. On November 25th, we're participating in an international reading of solidarity with the Palestinian people. It's a 24-hour reading happening online to accommodate all time zones, beginning in Palestine with poets there and then circling the earth. And Ghazal Mossadegh, who's actually here visiting us, has worked tirelessly on making this happen. So it's really exciting to have you here. Thanks for being here and for your work in that. And Ghazal will be reading tomorrow if you're able to get to Et al., our friends at Et al., which is also where our archives are held, and you'll get to know that a little bit more next year. But out in 24th and Mission, Ghazal will be reading with a few other folks to honor her press, Pam and our press. So if you can make it, do that. And what else? We're taking a break in December. We're tired. And we're going to take no programs in December. We're going to take a little rest, prepare for the big year ahead. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff happening, so keep an eye out for that. And I'm out. Hey, Brandon, you ready? All right.
Oh, wow, it's so loud. Do I need to even move this mic? No. A little bit up. My pleasure. Wow. Look at you all. Hi, Bob. So sweet to be here. What a privilege. My sort of like self-effacing joke this afternoon has been that I am the 5 minutes standing in between you and some of the greatest art ever made. So I'm going to keep my remarks succinct. But it's a pleasure. I once asked the writer Steve Benson, a fellow traveler of Bob's in San Francisco in the 70s and 80s, what he thought moods were. And he said he thought moods were like the weather. And I like that. I took him to mean that moods could be forecast, but not determined. That they, like the famous microclimates of the Bay, could shift quickly and dramatically depending on where you put your body. That they could constitute a backdrop at once passive and all-encompassing. It is my privilege tonight to introduce Robert Gluck, to put you in the mood for Bob, which perhaps, like trying to change the weather, should be the prerogative of the gods, but I will give it a shot. The task feels appropriate to Bob's writing because his work has an extraordinary capacity to put his readers, us, in a mood. His books have awakened in me wild, outrageous, marvelous downpours and exhaustive calms of reflective feeling for 20 years now. It is usually only in the realm of psychoactive substance that such scales of mood and sensibility and heightened forms of feeling could feel this adaptive. But Bob himself is such an iconic feeler and has the power to translate his most intimate sensibility into not just language, but affective desire. He writes in About Ed, any story underwrites its experience with the value of experience itself. Any language wants to be total, pathless, yearning. I have come to not only savor but crave the moods Bob's writing convokes in me. They are multiple. His books put me in the mood to write, for instance, sometimes quite desperately, one of the greatest compliments I think we can offer. More important than that, although related, Bob's books put me in the mood to live, effervescently, bravely feel my feelings, legibly yearn, have all the experience. When I'm reading and rereading his books, my senses literally become more capacious. The street smells smell more like the street. A kiss feels like an event on my lips. Guinea hen ragout invites an interior cellular flourish. This expansive mood has its origin in Bob's language, how he translates experience into yearning with its iconic and revelatory power of description. Who can ever forget, when you're scraping the seeds out of an acorn squash? The description in Jack the Modernist of Jack's ass smelling like a pumpkin. Or in About Ed, in a sentence I heard in this room with Sid 10 years ago or whatever. The vision of Bob's lover's body, so delicious, eating a peach over a sink. I've gone on for a bit now about moods and how I'm trying to get you in the mood. And I know some of you perverts have let your mind wander to the bedroom or couch, floor, sauna, behind a pyramid, whatever. Well, one type of weather is sex. And one of the common ways we ask about each other's moods is to try to determine if someone might share our mood to go to bed. And yes, one of the moods Bob's writing summons is horniness. But horniness is not a simple element in Bob's writing. Immense sensory pleasure is celebrated in the language of banality. It arrives when you're not expecting it, like a weird green thunderstorm right before a tornado. It can be divine, cosmic, an arousal so intense it makes everything in the universe feel bedewed. But aren't all these moods, the mood to write, that is, according to About Ed, the dead end of what we are able to say? The mood to feel more full of life, like Frank O'Hara suggests, the earth is full of the dead. The mood to fuck, that is, to find meaning in another person as we fall through the void. Aren't these just really a way of saying that Bob's books put us in the mood for love? One of his gifts to us is to demonstrate that love is indistinct from verbal expression. As Jack the Modernist opens, you're not a lover till you blab about it. Bob's books, Bob himself, Bob's way of loving and blabbing give us permission, give us heart, feed us, bathe us, make us feel so good it's like a tooth being pulled. And if you, like me, are now in the mood to experience this right now, I ask you to join me in giving some love to Robert Gluck.
Thank you, dear. And thanks to the lab, thanks to, what is it called again? City Lights. And Small Press Traffic. My life has been so intertwined with Small Press Traffic. It's wonderful that this book is launched under the auspices of this wonderful organization. So, I'm doing my archives now, and every once in a while I come across a note of something that didn't go into the book. And here is a little exchange. This is Ed in the hospital. It's about a nun. Ed says, I wanted to ask her, what kind of person becomes a nun? I heard her talking to someone outside my room, and she said to them, God told me to become a nun to help people. So I said, yeah, that's the reason, Bob said. Ed says, no, I want to ask her what kind of person follows those instructions. When I was thinking about what to read, I've been writing this book for decades, and so that means that I've read quite a bit of it in sections over the years. So I chose something, I think maybe in a book launch it's better to read something from the early part of the book. And it's a part that I think most people in the audience are too young to have heard. It's called Denny. And I think what you need, and it's very rambling. I also thought, well, tonight is a time for a winter's tale based on the weather. And thank you for coming out. A little atmospheric occurrence confuses us in San Francisco. We don't know what to do. I think the only thing you need to know is Mac is my across the street neighbor, and he has died. And Mary Madeline was a person in my older writers group, and she developed cancer, and we actually moved her into the store and took care of her until she died. So that's a lot of, commitment for an arts organization. Look at this, sweetie. I showed him a forgotten document found while hunting for checks in my top desk drawer. It was an agenda we had drawn up for Saturday night long ago. Our evenings were still filled with meetings. The left wing of SEIU, Bagel, Bay Area Gay Liberation, Enola Gay, Nuclear Proliferation. The agenda was written in pencil on typing paper, soft with age. Oh, this is taking place in about 82, I guess. It proposes categories and subcategories, or maybe a little later, maybe 85. Beginning item 1, warm-up kisses and music. A, Denny wants 20th century. B, Bob wants 18th century. And ending item 12, pillow talk. Look at all the things we used to do, I marveled. We read silently the amazing access blocked off for the duration. I forgot we did them. We glimpsed a lost horizon. "Oh, Bob," Denny said, a modest virgin. He reorganized us on the sofa. He sat face forward, his limbs so slight they resembled a marionette's. I reclined with my feet in his lap, and I considered his bony, eloquent profile. On the carpet, Lily slept deep in the blonde nest of her body, dazed by extreme age, arthritis, medicine. Denny sipped clear liquid that broke into metallic greenness on his tongue and juniper in his nostrils. He furrowed his square brow and cocked his head in an attitude of considering, and raised his glass, an outsized triangle on the stem, a shape so simple it might have been neon above a bar. "Nectar of the gods, mon ami." I raised my glass to the martini maker. The Modernist cocktail. We drank from that utopian wellspring and browsed through Architectural Digest. This was in the mid-'80s when that was something. The cost of the magazine was an extravagance, but we considered entire homes that were stylish blunders or myths of habitation, tried them on like new hats. A glazed chintz, silver peonies drifting on grassy green, a brief entertainment of lifting a flower to your nose. Would it be right for this room? We saw ourselves against a panorama climbing to a true global village. The flagstone terraces, heavy pages, and paneled bedrooms were voluptuous gardens without soil, the only home we ever pictured sharing. The gin gave the future we assembled a certain credence. Our game was so retro. Above our acted out feelings, retro, neo, post, and pseudo, arched a rainbow of pleasure. Denny curbed my taste for the ornate. Our love was predicated on convivial sex, validation, the luxury of shared assumptions, and an impulse to corrupt by creating new desires in each other. I wanted a Pompeian frieze above the picture rail. I looked up prayerfully, but Denny cautioned, "Pure of line, Bob. Look at this." He showed me a transom window, a fan of glass above a paneled mahogany door, clarity above an obstacle. "You know, I'm worried about Ed." "What's wrong?" he asked. "Intestinal things." "Oh, Bob, Ed always thinks he's sick." "Ed says the pain is under my fifth rib and feels orange," and the doctor starts shouting. "Is he worried about AIDS?" Ugh. He stopped long before we did. "Isn't it strange that you and I gave up all the unsafe sex on our agenda, even though the viral horse would have already left our barn?" "It's your cow and your barn door and your horse and your stable door. That's ideology for you, mon ami." When is Mac's funeral?" "Last Thursday." The service wasn't announced, and Noni kept it to herself. It started at 12 on the dot and lasted till 12:15. A third of the mourners missed it trying to park. I came in at the tail end, and you know, there was Mac. He still looked interested. We sat with our drinks. I thought, no, it's Ed's awareness of death in the midst of life that aroused me and made the doctors recoil, negating them as it does. The sudden friendship with the corpse shocked me. Mac was a ledge to jump off of. I hadn't meant to see anything so alien. Nothing is more unlikely, not hell or raising from the dead or Bardo states or Isles of the Blessed. Nothing is more fantastic than for someone you love to stop, just stop, and be lowered into a hole and covered with concrete and actual dirt. "Cremation's the revenge," Denny said, "but you don't have the sense that a person died. All these memorials and no body. I miss Mac. I wish I'd visited him in the hospital." "He died in 3 weeks. Lily still waits by his gate." Lily's ears tipped forward, though her eyes did not open. Then she slowly climbed onto her legs. Denny called, "Lily?" I sang, "Hey, baby, where you been all night? Your hair's all mussed up and your clothes don't fit you right." She licked her chops thickly and surveyed us without interest. Then she walked away, and a moment later we heard lapping in the kitchen. It took Mary Magdalene 2 years to die of lung cancer. Her daughters chose a beach north of Santa Cruz. Denny leaned back, miming boredom. She was in a box wrapped in gold foil. The ashes were actually thick flakes and bone meal. I took a handful and walked down, trying to be free. Mary Magdalene was as new to her mid-70s as I was to my mid-30s. She had freely scattered unfinished poems, unraised children, and their dads. I threw her out to sea, but wind caught her ashes and threw them back in my face. And Mary Magdalene went right up my nose and into my eyes. I was so blinded I had to kneel. I probably have some of her lodged in my lungs. "A walking urn," Denny said. I keep a motto that Mary Magdalene copied out for herself on a scrap of unruled paper. Luck is when opportunity meets preparation. The T's aren't crossed, but the script is bold and the sentences circled in red. It describes an imaginary encounter. She had no opportunity, and except for her death, she was never prepared. I held my breath by a bank of wheelchairs outside her door, listening to her doctor. "We've done everything we can. You waged a good fight. It's time just to make you comfortable," which meant pump you full of morphine and let you die. She said, "I see." "See what?" "A short man with huge eyebrows and chalky skin." In the hall, he took my elbow and said in a whisper, "Make sure she understands." He was discouraged. He was forced to renounce for a moment the lie that everyone gets well, that death is weak and complex, an unsuccessfully treated illness. I went from bystander to herald, carrying a coffin into the sick room. Beige drapes with abstract leaf patterns held the daylight back. I sat next to her. Her head rolled, and pain sort of pushed her tongue out of her mouth, basking in slow motion. I waited with my question until the spasms subsided, one expression on my face, as though no time had passed. "Mighty Mouse is on his way," she was referring to a little blue pill. "Mary Magdalene, you understand what the doctor said?" She replied wistfully, "I guess everyone has to die sometime." And with that, she divorced her rambling life from the medical marvels and aligned herself with the dying of the ages. With them, she met her destiny. Had she pretended to herself for our sake that she was recovering? She must have felt a pang as her departing relatives took life with them, and relief for the same reason. The farce was over, her solitude was complete, her large body began to dwindle. One dawn, a month later, she faded away. I think of Mary Magdalene's death in contrast to the death of Kelly, a very sweet man, my dad's best friend. Kelly died when I was 16. He checked into the hospital for nothing special, some tests, and quickly fell apart. He didn't want to live. My mom told me he died gasping for air, head rearing up, eyes bulging, mouth gaping. She said it was heartless of the staff to let Eleanor see him like that. But now I see him that way and always will. He struggles for breath, the terror of suffocation, the surprise forever protracted, rising. While Mary Magdalene subsides, her vital signs lose tension. She falls through veils of morphine into a second sleep. Kelly's spasm lasts through eternity, like the end of the story where he gains or loses everything. After his funeral, Stepping down from the porch, the tendons standing out from his neck became the elastic band in Eleanor's undies. It snapped. The bright red panties sagged into view below the widow's weeds. The priest thought her laughter was convulsed sorrow. On this stage I have constructed for my soliloquy, I can't speak about my death or bid you look in my grave. As for ordering my tomb, over the 2 dates put an image of men fucking to show what made me happy. Do the following stories belong here? They don't come to mind, but intrude. The first is more resonant, but simple to tell. It's just the pleasure my mother took in 4 eggs she brought 350 miles to my house. See, it has a blue shell. She held out the egg for me to look at, though not to hold. Bob, look at this. She was submitting a new piece of evidence, asking me to reconsider, but the problem was beyond articulation. Her elegant face tipped back, a conclusive gesture, and for a moment she occupied the 68 years of her life. It was a moment, breathless and possible. Sheer awareness of my own life made me tired. Dressing and undressing the body, treating its illnesses, feeding it, cleaning it, overwhelming it with orgasms, and so on. I asked for her best maternal advice. She replied without hesitation, as though she had been waiting for the question. You are alone, and you have only yourself to depend on emotionally and financially. Thanks, Mom, I thought. The body you gave me has to go all this way on its own. My cousin's black hen laid the eggs. They did have a blue cast and thick, sturdy shells, and my mother took an urgent pride in the rich orange of their yolks. Kathleen said of her husband Art, "He's a lucky man." I asked what made him lucky. What is luck in general? She said his parents are both alive. Art was 57. Kathleen is not simple. She didn't mean his parents were pure joy, but that Art is still a child. His body is still given to him. My mom's advice was chilling because she eliminated her own presence from my life. She gave her son exactly what he asked for, a survival kit. I should have asked for comfort. Last week, my dad told me this story. 40 years ago on Buckeye Road, a traffic cop beckons him into an intersection where another cop tags him. At traffic court, there are 30 people, all tagged in the same place. Judge O'Connell is a lush and a wild card. He raises a pistol and points it around the courtroom. Everyone jumps and ducks for cover. He explains that a car driven by a drunk is as dangerous as a loaded gun. Defendants plead guilty except for my dad, who pleads guilty with reservations. The judge calls him into chambers. My dad says, "O'Connell, don't you wonder why 30 people got tickets at one intersection? Doesn't that seem a little strange to you?" The judge thinks a moment and says, "Why don't you call me Your Honor?" My dad was sitting in a mission chair in the bay window of my living room. He lowered his face, the fierce eyebrows and heavy pouches I seemed to be inheriting, and all now have completely inherited. He studied the legal situation. A vase of yellow and lavender stock emitted obvious perfume. I was suddenly aware of the southern sky behind him, not cloudy but flat gray, and that I acknowledged the day by wearing an old green cardigan. My father replied as though I'd asked the question, O'Connell, I'm supposed to be judged by my peers. If I call you Your Honor, you'd have to call me Your Highness. My dad triumphed over corruption and hypocrisy with the small weapon of language, a weapon that guarantees happy endings, that is, endings where the truth is completely expressed. Anyway, my father confided, as though turning away from the judge, O'Connell wasn't so full of honor. Chuck knew him. Chuck was my helper on the truck. Chuck was a non-person, no driver's license, no social security number, no draft card. For $10, he beat O'Connell in some flop house. His honor used to shout, "Not in the head, anywhere but the head." So Chuck was gay? I felt a restless mirth verging on anger. What was my dad saying with this fragment from the mid-50s? Was he helplessly following the path of association, as his son is doing in this chapter? He looked surprised, annoyed. Nah, they met outside some bar. Chuck was a drunk. $10 was a lot of money in those days. A man without identity was my father's helper, and Judge O'Connell's helper too. And both Chuck and my dad beat the authority out of the judge. With authority, there are always spectators. With spectators, always mirth. I am intrigued by the specificity of my dad's memory, though he lacks the sheer disinterestedness and solidarity of Mac. My dad thinks it's easy for me to visit O'Connell's court with him. He doesn't realize how easy it is for me to visit O'Connell's hotel room. The child without home or name beats the father with his own paternal staff, thus turning their roles upside down. Antique authority sheds his robes to become naked, a baby naked lust, to become the baby naked lust. When there's a child in the family, there's always a lesson to learn. Today's lesson is, pleasure has performed a miracle. The lucky child will never die. Chuck is handsome as sin, sandy brown hair, drowsy eyes, a few freckles, the narrow chest and gleaming skin of the prodigal son. Don't spare the rod. Sweet must of the red floral carpet, dusty Venetian blinds, covering the airwell, pine furniture. On his knees, torso across the bed, the child martyr inhales the sour breath of old chenille, while the torturer proceeds with lazy goodwill, not angry or fierce. Devils and angels debate on either side of the mattress, the debate of the urge for more life against the urge to break life's tension. Congratulations to your soul, one of them says officially. Welcome to some heaven of love. Another replies, not a very permanent heaven, this love affair. As if to confirm it, another says, back on the bus, everyone. Deliverance for the camera. Memory constructed of film loops and pages from grainy porn magazines. The judge's moaning replaces his memory. Chuck rises to the occasion. He beats the judge with joyous, destructive energy. It's like an old daguerreotype, the golden age always disappearing into mirror. The beating sets the judge in his own soft body, but his intensity stands for the thrill Chuck might be feeling. Do not disturb hangs from the doorknob. The judge will base his orgasm on his mental reconstruction of the pleasure in a patch of silky skin on Chuck's erection. I admit I'm attracted to their reassuring failure, their aura of the already known. It's easy to back away from the two men. They shrink as the screen diminishes and descends, their actions cartoonish, hyper, the young man writhing, the judge throwing a tantrum, a frantic child. When I was young, the uncanny took the form of Abraham Lincoln. Writing this story takes me back to Lincoln's part in my childhood. A magazine spread shaped my life, I think, on his disinterment in the 19th century. Is that possible? The article described fingernails grown long and handkerchief-covering nose smell, and the disconcerting fact that the corpse was well preserved rather than a decent skeleton. In the grave, he continued to be Lincoln. With his Frankenstein height and his long, narrow hands, Lincoln embodied a bleak solemnity that made his benign gestures especially intolerable. There was some kindness to a little girl he wrote her after he had been murdered. He spooked me in the photos where even the light is frayed and rotten. The wound at the back of his head, his boogeyman clothes, the intolerable resemblance of his body in the coffin to his photos and statues, a face from a waxworks whose expression is wax. I confused Lincoln with a comic book cover of Frankenstein bashing through a brick wall, and I feared for the safety and continuation of my being. Yes, I am lying in bed, and the closet door stands half open. I make out a few empty hangers and the shoulders and sleeves of my shirts. Red and black, blue and white, forest green, white Oxford cloth, allies whose value derives from their fidelity to me. A dark wind from the closet pushes the door, touches my face. First the dreary fear, then the lanky monster gives it shape. His body pitches forward, his eyes are dead, his huge arm is wildly foreshortened. Any feeling is an acceptable distraction from my bewilderment, even terror, even nostalgia for the tolling bell. In the bathroom, he crashes through the wall of white brick tiles, a force nothing can stop, that comes for me in its own time, but surely at night, when I am fat, larval, without reason to defend myself. What is there to defend? This monster was further conflated with Muscle Man, a zombie casually invented by Dennis, my older brother, and then forgotten by him. Reanimation not worth considering. And it was in part his casual existence and the shabby materials of the story that frightened me, alerting me as they did to the random danger of becoming a living corpse. Intolerable the dead who partake of life rather than the negation of all states. Muscle Man starts off as a kindly elementary school teacher who loves children, examples of fatherly love. But one bright night, his car skids off a cliff and crashes on the rocks far below and explodes into flames. And all that's left for the doctors to put together are muscles. So he drinks only 1 drop of water a year and eats only 1 crumb of bread. He has no stomach, but his muscles retain their vitality. I don't think he wears clothes, but I am not free to look at his crotch. Physical commotion has a sexual dimension, the depth of perspective of the live body in the abyss, an impure reverse death. How can I appease Muscle Man's hectic spirit? He crashes through walls in search of children. To do what? Bob. Why do the dead want my body? To relive their own solitude? I never got that far in the confusion of living and dead, and perhaps all this has little to do with the death of actual people. Dying is not the same as hiding. The lovers on my tomb are a bodily promise to keep the argument of my life alive. My parents are a guarantee of possession, an incomplete document to read forward and backward endlessly. So it's no surprise that when I was a child, death was a matter of possession of the body. When my mother died, I put her in my wagon and wheeled her to our temple. They didn't want her. Then to my dad, he didn't want her. No one seemed to want her. So I kept her for myself on my toy chest. I didn't tell the rabbi or my dad. I couldn't count on them to remain indifferent. If they discussed the dream or even reacted, my mother would be partly theirs and my dream taken as a challenge, and I did want to keep my mother with me. Her skin begins to peel, so I remove her clothes and place my toy on the hallway floor, on the green carpet, and smooth her skin back. I don't exactly see her body. It remains a blind spot, but my confusion distills a tremulous pleasure. Then I sit at my bedroom window. Instead of the despicable houses and front lawns, the landscape of my little soul has been replaced by sweeping pastoral vistas. I am conscious of the disjunction between the absolute visual stillness, intense blue through the firs, the meadow's gold sheen, a tremor of cattails by the fence, and the terrible rattle and cough of an old lawnmower somewhere down below. So that is that part. Now, just to close, I'm just going to read, I think, 3 or 4 dreams from Ed to give him the last word. Before that, a gray cat in heat moans and smolders. It lies on its side on a mound of coal. Gray, charring pebbles throw off intense heat. Daniel and I take turns shoveling coal on its side. Each shovelful makes it hornier, howling pain, pleasure. I sense the pain in the skin of its anus. It jumps, flaming fur and smoke, and writhes midair. Before that, the art teacher leads me to a private room for nude models. I pull a nylon navy blue scant over my thighs, sliding over dangling balls, catching my cock, pointing straight up as nylon hugs, adjusting it downwards for comfort. It joins my balls as I bounce to set their places. Intense pleasure spreads from my sack. Now I rub my cock, stretching the tight nylon deep blue so the teacher can feel danger at my erection. He jumps down, mouth wide over pointed cock. Mother walks in. I throw a tantrum. Can't I develop my masculinity? Where is myself? Before that, the memory of a huge Victorian in a meadow next to a small bay. Blackened by age, it shifts positions to house an aristocratic corpse who keeps his 2 young sons prisoner. One windy, wintry day, father and his long nose assign tasks and leaves. The boys struggle, and father drives the sweeping curve of the coast, evil eye scanning from the corner for the slightest trace of love across the watery distance. And this is the last thing I'll read. Before that, 6 hands fondle me from behind. My erection grows. A cat licks my lips, then places his lips on mine. It sucks and pulls back, turning the kiss into a kiss with a smack. The door opens. The cosmos descends. The air is glass. The sky is infinite black, and each turning galaxy is before me. Vast space is defined, and I travel like a motionless comet through the vacuum. Thank you. I hope you will still stay a bit, and this becomes a party, and there's drinks and cookies. Okay?
you know how small those are.